In this video, we have a ton of stuff to talk about. We have Mando and Grogu coming to Galaxy's Edge. We're going to talk the Anaheim corruption probe. We're also going to talk about what is going on with the Splash Mountain retheme. All of that up next. Hey everybody, welcome aboard to another episode of Orange Grove 55. Alia, you were laughing at my intro. What's going on?
I was enjoying it. I was like, la la la, la la.
And then it's like corruption, and then it's like that's.
Oh, you mean my responses to everything? Yes, I wasn't laughing. I was trying to show like a play, like drama, like.
I'm just kidding. But we have a fantastic panel today. I got producer Dre, I got Disney Family Man, and we brought Alia back to the show. Awesome, Alia, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We have a fantastic show today. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Anaheim corruption probe, Mando and Grogu, and Boba Fett coming to Galaxy's Edge, and we're going to talk about what the heck is going on with Splash Mountain retheme. Before we dive into all of that, though, I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel. Right over here is producer Dre, Vash Guy, host of Freshly Squeezed. If you could let everybody at home, Dre, know where they can find you on social media.
Hey, no problem. If you want to interact with me, you can find me. Best place to find me is going to be at Vash Sky. It's right down there, just like it's spelled on your screen right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now on Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go. We'll get you in the park there.
Perfect. And down below, we got Disney Family Man 23, George. George, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Definitely some juicy but yet sticky Disney info coming out of Orange Grove 55. So can't wait to discuss it with all you.
Absolutely. George, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel at Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you could always find me here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner.
Perfect. And last but not least, we have Alia Aloha back on the show. Alia, welcome. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Hi.
You're very
hello.
welcome. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Well, for those who knew my Twitter, I had a Twitter sabbatical, but that is over. I am back, and my Twitter handle is Alia Aloha.
Perfect.
Pay attention, it's showtime.
There you go.
Perfect.
Like me. I'm just kidding.
We're all set. We're ready to talk some shop. Okay, there's a lot to discuss today. A whole lot.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are kind of not aware, there's a pretty big situation going on in Anaheim politics right now. The FBI is investigating the former mayor of Anaheim, Harry Sadu, and it's really leaving the door open for a lot of questions. What does that mean for Disneyland Resort? What's going to happen with Disneyland Forward? There's a ton going on here. We touched upon it a few days ago, but we thought we would kind of do like a little more of a deep dive into this topic. Producer Dre, I'll start with you. Where are you at with this corruption probe right now?
Well, I've been doing a bunch of research of it over the last few days, but largely within the last couple of hours, because it is a developing story, and you've got a lot of you got a lot of people involved. Apparently, from what I can understand, the FBI started looking at I guess some political consultants, but mainly this person that was working in the Chamber of Commerce. This person's name Todd Ament. Right? I believe that's what the name is. And apparently he's being indicted right now and charged with, mortgage fraud, embezzlement, all kinds of, bad things that you don't want to be associated with, right? And apparently this probe into him and his dealings, at least with some of these, real estate deals and so forth, led them to be, led them to looking at Anaheim city politics in general. And a lot of political consultants are being wrapped up into this. A lot of the big name players in Anaheim politics, whether it be political leaders, businesses, and other factions involved, are being looked at by the FBI. And this is like I said, this is a very complicated, complex story. A lot of people who might end up in these crosshairs right here, and it is really fascinating. There's more to the story, but I just kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on all of that, just from the outset.
Yeah, Alia, I'll start with you. I mean, like, what's your overall thoughts on this whole Anaheim kind of corruption probe? Like, where are you at with it right now?
Well, personally, not stressed at all. It's not my pay grade. I'm not being paid to worry about this. If I was, I would be pixelated in disguise because of my NDA. But this is just like a hobby for me. And meanwhile, I'm munching popcorn. But it's very intriguing. I'm just kind of like, oh, let's see where this goes. Thus far, we'll make it clear. Disney has not been indicted on anything. No Disney employee has been indicted on anything. It's just that it's when Disney's mentioned, or with this being Anaheim, everybody thought, oh, is Disney maybe company A? So that it becomes a clickbait thing. That's kind of how Disney has gotten roped into this with the headlines and everything. But it's made clear as far as the FBI is concerned, there's no issue thus far. So it's just kind of eat popcorn, and this is intriguing.
And I also want to make it clear too, there hasn't been charges, filed for anybody. There's been no indictments for anybody outside of this Tom Ament person. Even the Anaheim mayor, who resigned, is not looking at any charges yet. But that's where it kind of gets, right into Anaheim politics. As we know, I believe on Monday, Harry Sadu actually stepped in and resigned over a kind of a pay-for-play kind of corruption scandal involving, I guess, $1 million in campaign donations and a helicopter in exchange for selling the Angel Stadium and the land it sits on for less than its appraised value. $320 million, while a lot, is like, wow. I mean, that's, the building alone is probably worth a lot more than that. And now when you factor in the land, I mean, that's we're talking probably $500 million at least. So to have it, be sold for $320 million has had a lot of locals in Anaheim and a lot of local groups and so forth kind of concerned. It's like, well, wait a minute, why are we giving away the farm here? What's going on here? And so a lot of people suspected for a while that, maybe there was some pay for play going on. Maybe there was some back end deals on this. And come to find out, at least in this 99-page affidavit that the FBI had filed and published, it looks like there was some backdoor dealings, according to this helicopter and this campaign cash. And as you know, Harry Sadu has been, he has had dealings with Disney. He's been pretty close with Disney. Going back to when the shutdown actually occurred, I believe it was the Reopen OC campaign, right? Teaming up with Buena Park and some of the other surrounding cities, Garden Grove, and attempting to get the theme park operations that a lot of those communities relied on back open. I remember him giving a speech on some rooftop with the Disneyland Resort in the background saying, pleading, hey, can we have this open right here? Right. So they've done some business dealings. And the question really is, how close are these ties between Disney and Harry and this Todd guy? It's definitely not looking too good. And like you said, Alia, some connections have been drawn. Apparently, some of that, I guess the affidavit's either redacted or has some placeholder information, right? But Company A has been seen to be Disney in this whole thing, or at least the Disneyland Resort. And there's a specific person attached to this.
For Disney, right? Carrie Nocella, I believe her name is.
Is it Nocella or is it Nocella? I don't want to get
maybe
this
it's
wrong.
Nocella. I'm not really sure how to pronounce. Yeah, Carrie Nocella, I believe, and she's the director of external affairs for the Disneyland Resort.
external affairs, and I guess she has been involved in a lot of California politics specifically. I guess, OG, you were doing some research on this, and there's some connections to maybe Jerry Brown and some other types.
Yeah. She was appointed to a board by Jerry Brown, ex governor of California, Jerry Brown. Now she's also an attorney, from what I understand. From what I've researched, she's an attorney, which is actually very interesting for this particular situation because she is not she is not a rookie by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, she's not going to go into this stuff not knowing what to do, or she's an attorney, she's a lawyer, and especially if she's working for Disney, she knows her way around. You know what I'm saying? So I would be very, very surprised. This is just my opinion, personal opinion. I would be very, very surprised if she gets indicted or there's any kind of illegal doings on her part. That just because I feel like she knows her way around the law, and I would be very surprised if she slipped up like that. Hey, now it's possible. It's very, very possible, but she seems to have a background in this stuff, and it would be pretty surprising if she slipped up to that degree. I don't know, but we'll see.
Apparently, and here's where it gets a little kind of murky here, because apparently in this 99-page affidavit, there were communications that were, I guess there were some wiretapping going on, and some phone calls were, what do you want to call it?
Recorded?
Yeah, recorded and intercepted. That's kind of the technical term for it, right? They were intercepted, and again, I mean, Nichella's on the phone apparently talking about hey. Well, let me go ahead and give you the exact quote right here, because this is, like I said, this is a pretty complicated story, and I want to get the details right here. So let me see.
And George, we'll get to you right after he makes his point. We'll get to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a lot of technical information.
It's a lot of stuff.
I'm absorbing it all. So if I'm sitting here quiet, it's it's going into my brain.
Yeah, I guess Nichella actually recently deleted her Facebook and her Instagram accounts, according to the, I believe it was the LA Times that actually wrote that. So that's kind of concerning how it's like, well, if you didn't do anything wrong, why are you doing this? Maybe it was on advice like, hey, maybe you want to delete your social media accounts, let this fire die down, and just as kind of a preventative, but it is.
And here's a point though that Alia made earlier. I'm giving credit to Alia because this was actually a point she made in regards to the deletion of the social media accounts. Is deleting the accounts isn't going to do anything. The FBI has access to all that data. I mean, from what I understand, the LA Times says she deleted it last week. That data is all that data is on the servers.
100%.
I don't think she's really trying to hide anything, because I think she would know that would not be gone just by erasing it a few days ago.
I think it was more about maybe public criticism directed her way. Maybe it was comments and all that kind of stuff. That's what it sounds most likely. But apparently there was an exchange where there was some bond measure that was written up by a political consultant for Harry Sidhu to read at some city council meeting in 2021 in March. And I guess it was a bond measure. It was like $210 million. But it was what was said it was to handle some deficits as a part of the shutdown. And I guess he was reading this kind of script that he had typed up, and Nichella kind of, messaged this political consultant while Harry Sidhu was actually giving this speech live, and she was saying stuff like, he reads your script so terribly, and they were kind of laughing about it and stuff like that. And I guess there's been some retreats, as they've called it, that have had these these business leaders and political leaders talk about how to, as the affidavit points out, how to operate or how to lead the Anaheim politics and what to do, which is kind of like, that kind of gets into pay for play. That kind of gets into, some dirty territory right there.
To be fair, we have no idea what Universal Studios does with Universal City. So.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. No, this stuff goes on. I know it goes
Yeah,
on.
with all companies.
There ain't no question. But when you have this kind of surrounding, allegations of corruption, embezzlement, fraud, these are not necessarily things that Disney wants to be connected with.
No,
and the fact that they're on this short list, as the affidavit calls them, a family or cabal of these business leaders and associated political leaders, they're in the family, so to speak, and I don't think they want to be a part of that family necessarily.
Right. Well, and there is definitely and I'm not a lawyer, but for those of you at home, shockingly, I'm not a lawyer.
Neither
but this stuff is complicated, and there is a fine line. Like, lobbying is legal; it's totally legal. You can lobby, but there's certain ways you can do that will get you in hot water, though. You know what I'm saying? And there is that red line that if you cross, you're getting into some illegal territory, but there are legal ways to do it. It's a whole big thing.
And then there's things that are legal that would be ethically sketchy, but they're still legal. So it's just
right. And Ali, you mentioned to me via email, and I think you brought up a fantastic point when you were saying that you believe that Disneyland was sort of maybe ethically sketchy, but they were riding the edge. Nothing technically illegal, but morally kind of corrupt, so to speak, right?
You have to remember Disney's a corporation, and corporations are not moral. So
they're not.
Well, I mean, not expressly so, right? And here's the thing: corporations are a collection of people, and so it's like if you got some people doing dirty things for, maybe good reasons or financial reasons as it relates to the company, I mean,
I see that as the silver lining or lemonade. If this kind of weans those people out, okay, cool.
That's true.
Maybe Disney decides to sever ties just to say, hey, you know what, these are bad apples, not corrupting the bunch, so to speak, and I mean, we might get updates on that as time goes forward. Look, this goes back, a long, long time. I remember, in the 1990s and the 2000s, looking at Disneyland making its transition from Disneyland the park to Disneyland Resort. There were all kinds of allegations of corruption. Disney was apparently giving city leaders, city council members, and mayors and stuff like that access to the parks. They would, they'd write them in, or they would mail out, theme park tickets for members and their family and stuff like that, giving them VIP tours and stuff like that. I mean, it was one of those like, that doesn't look quite good, and especially it was on the eve of some of the big, decisions that the city would make regarding issues like Westcott and so forth. I mean, this has been happening even back in Walt's day. Some would say that it's like, okay, well, this kind of hype bubble that we've talked about before, right? For the Disneyland Resort, where people who are building in the Anaheim area are restricted in terms of how high their buildings can actually reach. As it relates to Disneyland, and according to where you actually are on the map is how high your building can go in order, and Walt justified it saying, hey, look, listen, I don't want, people intruding on the magic. I don't want people, the berm keeps everything out. And I don't want people kind of intruding on that, because there was a real estate developer who was looking to, install a hotel that would look into Disneyland. This was going back in the late 50s, early 60s. Wow. And he was like, no, I don't want this to go on. And he kind of strong-armed the city council to get those kind of zoning measures in place to prevent that kind of stuff. But that's, this is kind of the back and forth tug of war Anaheim's had with Disneyland forever. Yeah.
George, welcome to the show.
Sorry about that, George.
Sorry, George. He's so quiet.
What's on your mind? Like, what do you? Where are you at with the whole Anaheim probe, and just kind of general feelings, musings, what we discussed? Where are you at with this whole thing?
Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. So in my personal opinion, as Dre had mentioned, with the relationship between Disney and Anaheim, it's always been a kind of a rocky type of relationship. It's like an on again, off again type of relationship. So it really doesn't surprise me as to why Disney's even trying to promote Disneyland forward because of these these issues with the city. And now with everything going on, and as of right now, yes, no one has been fined. No one has been, put in the spotlight to say, indicted, accusations. It's just, everything's circulating right now. But again, it's one of those notions that because something like this has come up, they have to look into everything and everybody that could possibly have any little small connection whatsoever, whether it's relevant or not. But they have to look into everything, and Disney, unfortunately, is part of that, whether there was involvement or not. But it could have severe delay as to what that they want to accomplish with Disneyland Forward. So just the notion that they are being looked at, whether or not that there's anyone involved, but it's going to heavily change the notion as far as what can be done at a certain period of time and how fast it's going to be accomplished. And for me, it's frustrating because, especially for Disneyland, because they never usually get the love that they deserve. And we finally have a big project like Disneyland Forward. And now it's something like this that's just going to put take off a hinge of the wheelbarrow, so to speak. And it's like I don't even know really where it's going to lead. I mean, I still think we'll get a little bit of info as far as like the expo goes, as far as if the project is kind of on time as far as moving forward, because with Disneyland Forward, they're still going to need the Eastern Gateway project. That's a given fact. And it's pretty much now, as we look into this, depending on what happens, is it going to affect the timeline? I believe Disneyland Forward will move forward, no pun intended, but I feel like it's going to be delayed and somewhat diluted, as how usually all these things happen, where we get this major concept, this vision, and then by the time we get the final product, it's like D-grade meat.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing that's interesting to me, because I hear a lot, I see a lot of this narrative out there. And it's not just the Disney online community. It's even like the mainstream media, that Disney basically runs the city of Anaheim. Like they are like the boss, right? They pull all the strings. They're the puppet master. They're the Emperor Palpatine of the whole entire city, and they run the show. That's fine, and I think a lot of people would probably assume that. But man, I've been following this stuff for a long time, and I don't really see it that way. I mean, Disney fights the city constantly, and they don't really always get what they want. They tried to build a fourth hotel to get some tax breaks, and the city fought them over like 100 feet or something. They tried to build the Eastern Gateway project, like George mentioned, and they bucked them on that. At Westcott, there was all kinds of problems. There's always an issue, and I just feel like if Disney really ran the city like people claim it does, why are they having all these issues getting anything done? It makes no sense to me.
And that's my big major concern. And I know we're talking about Disneyland right now, but it's semi-connected. That's my major concern with Walt Disney World, because then when you have to start relying on counties and city council and what have you, because they're so used to doing it on their own, are these the issues that's going to arrive in Florida as well? So now it almost seems like a fair even game that could nothing be produced out of Florida or California until all this gets unraveled.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Mr. Vashguy?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a tough thing, because obviously Disney understood like the ramifications of not having an RCID or a Reedy Creek Improvement District to rely on, right? You don't want another Anaheim situation. I think they were all very well aware. It's like, man, we want a little bit more control over, our operation as it relates to Florida over what we have now in California. And, on a lot of that, I do agree. Like they should have, certain privileges afforded to them in order, because we're just talking about so much land. We're talking about, so much property and so forth. It's like, it doesn't necessarily impact the surrounding areas in quite the same way that Disneyland does. Disneyland, obviously, as much as I'm not a fan of like, these zoning laws that control like what Disneyland can actually do on the property they own, I also understand that if they do something, it will impact the city in a way that you wouldn't maybe necessarily feel that same impact on the surrounding counties in terms of in Florida. So I can kind of understand that, like just traffic, for instance, right? If they build that place up and, add on, let's say, 4 resort hotels. Well, where do people park for those 4 resort hotels? How do they get there? That's a lot of people. That could be, tens of thousands of people. How does that affect traffic? And, just all kind of those things. So I get that. It's kind of this kind of back and forth, this kind of interrelationship that goes on right there. It can get pretty complicated. But as it relates to Disneyland Forward, oh, man, This one concerns me a whole lot. I mean, obviously, because you've already got city council members in Anaheim already discussing, like, we have to restore the trust of the public. We have to restore, our good name, so to speak. When it comes to the affairs that we have with other businesses, when we have with other corporate entities, and how it relates to the residents or constituents we represent, right? And apparently they had a city council meeting, I believe, on May 24th, just, immediately following city's resignation. And some of the comments, they... Here, I'll read you two, right? From people who were able to speak. Quote, "Let me tell you something. I'm a Mexican-American second generation, and I strongly identify with the comment that Christopher Zapata told Rob Fabella. Quote, you effed with the wrong Mexican." Okay? That's not good. And then, quote, "When you sell your soul to sit at the popular kids table during recess, when you go along with silencing your opposition at this microphone on the seats, on those seats with your colleagues, you're feeding into and enabling Harris to do time and time again." Anaheim is frustrated. Anaheim is felt betrayed. Anaheim is not, they're out for blood, for one. Yeah. But two, does this hurt the momentum as generated by this kind of rekindling, so to speak, that we saw from the shutdowns? Right. The shutdowns affected that community in huge ways, and it affected a lot of people, a lot of business owners. And momentum was really looking forward to Disneyland Forward. It was going in that direction, and that's, I think, why Disney decided to announce something like that at that time, because they understood, like, people want to see Disney thrive and do well because it means that they will do well in response. Right. And now I just think that whole momentum is completely upended. I mean, I really don't know what happens with Disneyland Forward at this point, quite frankly.
So do you feel like it's not going to happen at all?
So there's two kind of tracks here. One, I mean, obviously it's delayed. I think that's like what you can say right at the very onset. Right. But does it come back in the same form? Is it piecemealed out? Like it's always been, where they look for, zoning. Changes to zoning in certain parcels of property scattered around the resort, and kind of do that slowly over time? Or do they come back with a proposal like Disneyland Forward in the future? I'm not really sure. I think at this point, I think the city, in order to look at a project like this, they might want to look at more firm plans on what they want to do with the land that they're rezoning for. So Disneyland Forward was a vision of what they could do, not necessarily what they were going to do. They were just looking for the rezoning.
Could the city actually, of what they're going through right now, is it possible that they could literally just say to Disney, here's your land, do what you wish with it, without needing the sort of like the sugar coating of it as titled as Disneyland Forward?
I mean, yeah, I mean, they could approve some zoning changes under a different banner than Disneyland Forward, but because it has so many implications for the city, you can't just sneak that kind of thing through. I mean, it really does have to go through a public process, unfortunately, and that's kind of one of the problems of not having a Reedy Creek. You really have to go to the city in order to get some of these approvals. Somebody was saying, I don't want to call them out, but somebody was saying that Disneyland can't build a third gate on the Toy Story parking lot. That's not true. That area is zoned for theme park space, but everything else, I mean, it's really not. They have to get approvals for these things, and they would have had to piecemeal this slowly throughout time. Without Disneyland Forward, they were trying to get in one big, large lump sum right now, right here, and I just don't see that, at least right now.
One of the frustrating things that I'm seeing right now is this kind of stuff. Anaheim residents, and look, I'm going to be real upfront with you guys right now. This is going to be an uncomfortable conversation because I know it's not popular to take the stance I'm going to take, but it's a stance I really actually genuinely feel. Yeah. And so I'm not going to lie. I'm going to give you my own.
Well, okay. Well, before you do this, you have to do this right. You have to put up the balls to the wall.
Oh, here we go.
He's going to go balls to the walls. Here we go. Here we go.
I'm going full George, balls to the wall. This is the issue that I have. Okay. So this is from the voice of OC. It says Anaheim residents are asking what it takes to get corporations to sit out the local campaign season. And I'm just going to read you a couple paragraphs here. Okay. A stream of adults wearing Mickey ears and sunscreen stopped upon a red hand signal at the crosswalk of Catella Avenue and Harbor Boulevard on Wednesday morning. A few feet away stood roughly 50 to 60 other adults wearing union shirts and crowding the same intersection, or what might be considered the heart of Anaheim's resort industry. These were hospitality workers likely employed by the hotels and entertainment venues all around them. Okay, so here's my beef. These are hospitality workers. They're protesting to get Disney out of. Basically, they're protesting Disney's influence in the area. Is basically what they're protesting while they are employed in the hospitality business that is directly connected to Disney being there. Like a lot of these hotels that these people work at would not even exist if Disney Park was not there. If the Disney Resort was not there, these people wouldn't even have jobs. They have a job because of Disneyland's influence, and it reverberates, and obviously more hotels get built because that's a tourist destination. But now we're going to sit there after you have a job that you're benefiting from Disney's influence, and you're going to protest Disney's influence. This is the kind of stuff that boggles my mind. It's like, do you not understand that? Like, look, I understand that Disney's a mega corporation, and I know it's not popular to side with them. I get it. But the fact of the reality is it's a huge economic engine for Anaheim. Anaheim would not be what it is today without the resort. It's a job creator. It brings in a huge amount of revenue for the city. They should have a say in what goes on in the city. It should have a voice in the campaign season. It's a huge part of the freaking city. Like, how do you leave that out of the equation? It makes no sense to me.
And you think that they would have noticed this because of the shutdown. I mean, from the shutdown and everything not even moving, it was like a ghost town. I mean, between Harbor Boulevard and Catella, no businesses were moving because of the struggles to even get Disneyland back up operational. It took them way over the extended period of time that anyone ever thought Disneyland would be closed.
Right.
And I mean, and people even protested to that point to get Disneyland up and running. And these weren't even just fans just because they wanted to go on vacation or have their annual passes back. These were people because they knew what Disneyland brought to the city of Anaheim. They knew once Disneyland gets back up function operational, so will these other businesses. So now it's almost like they're backtracking again. They're going back to how Anaheim usually operates, to the fact of thinking that Disneyland is more of a nuisance than a contributing factor.
I don't get it. Alia, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, we have to remember those that picket are usually the extreme of a side. We don't know what those in the middle of the community, of the union, et cetera, think. This could just be that extreme faction. So, but yes, it's not showing thinking of the big picture of, oh, I'm employed by, in a way that when it says corporations, they're asking that even their employer stays out of the government. And then they're forgetting, though, that their employer is thriving because of Disneyland. So
right.
It's just
right. And that's a fair point, Ollie. And that's a fair point that you make. I mean, a lot of the people that protest are going to get out there with signs. they're going to be on the fringe, so to speak, on the far extreme, whether it's left, whether it's right. The people standing on street corners are not going to be middle of the road. These people are taking a very, very firm, passionate stance. That's why they're out there. It's a very fair point. Very fair point. Yeah, I've had this kind of frustration though with the city of Anaheim and its residents for a long time. Because I do see a lot of pushback. For years, Disneyland would get crap because the surrounding residents would complain of fireworks at night. I'm like, well, okay, the park didn't just pop up overnight. It's been there for 65 years.
Right.
Like, if you don't like fireworks, you don't move next to Disneyland. There's plenty of places in California you can move. It makes no sense to me. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they are a huge economic driver for the city. A lot of what Anaheim does impacts Disneyland. The fact that they wouldn't have a seat at that table, I think, is nonsensical. Now, nobody wants an outsized seat at that table, not relative to how large they are. If it goes beyond that, I think that's what people get upset. But look, listen, my feeling on this is, I don't like corporations being in politics at all, outside of their direct business interests, and if it affects their business, then it's like they kind of have to, because it's like it's going to affect them directly. Outside of that, when it's like, the whole thing that happened in Florida and stuff like that, it's like, ooh, that doesn't, that's now you're kind of stepping into territory that's kind of outside of your pure purview as a financial institution, right? Or a corporation, I should say. Anaheim, this goes back and forth, right? Eastern Gateway Project. OG, you made a great point about this. Eastern Gateway Project, the parking structure that was going to be on the eastern side of Harbor, was scuttled because a bunch of companies got together that were going to be impacted by the traffic flow that was going to change with the land bridge that was going to go over Harbor Boulevard to get people on the other side there. That traffic that a lot of those businesses kind of rely on was going to be impacted by Eastern Gateway, and so they scuttled the project, essentially. And the city council didn't approve it, and now it goes away, and now they have to build a new parking structure next to Mickey and Friends parking structure, and the land that they were going to give over, because it impacted the bus drop-off, right? It was going to move with this Eastern Gateway project to the other side, and they were going to allow for the bus drop-off to be incorporated into DCA proper. Well, because that didn't happen, now that affects the Marvel land and where it goes. It was going to go in that space. Now it goes into, a Bugs land. And all these things have these reverberating effects, from this kind of interaction between the city of Anaheim and Disney. And I just think it's unrealistic for Disney to stay out of it completely, because if they do, they're going to get railroaded. And that's just the bottom line. There has to be an opposing force in order to balance out the equation when it comes to Anaheim. Now, nobody wants, an outsized role for Disneyland when it comes to that, right? Nobody wants, maybe tens of billions of dollars going into the political system and, infecting, maybe corrupting, the city. Nobody wants that. But at the same time, you can't expect Disney just to sit on the sidelines with this stuff. You just can't do it.
No, you can't. They're too big of an entity in the city. I mean, it's too big. I mean, they're going to have. Look, they're going to have a pretty major, significant seat at that table. Because of how much they impact that city. And I think, I agree with you, Dre. I think it's very unrealistic for a lot of groups to think that like they should just kind of be. Look, the fact of the matter is, Disney is not every other company in Anaheim. They're not every other company. They are bigger. They do drive more economic activity to the area. They do provide more jobs. I mean, we have to face that reality, and there's going to always be there's always going to be a bigger shift towards Disney in regards to influence to some degree, just because of what they contribute. It's not the family-owned liquor store on Catella, or it's not, the Cocos on Harbor, whatever. This is a massive entity in the city. It's an elephant in the room. It's just, you have to acknowledge that. You
They're
just have
basically-
Closure during the pandemic illustrated that. So,
Of
Go ahead,
course,
George.
absolutely.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say they basically are going to need a Disneyland forward for Disneyland forward. They're literally going to have to need a campaign for a campaign, and it just seems like it's like layer upon layer that as they go further down the rabbit hole, it's like really what is going to give in order to get the ball rolling, so to speak.
Now, Alia, I had a question for you. Because I have a suspicion about this, because I'm seeing these kind of intercepted text communications and calls and so forth between, this Nutella person and city officials and political consultants. What is the likelihood that the FBI filed a FISA warrant and were granted a FISA warrant when it relates to Todd Mnt and some of these other things going on here? Because I just don't see why the FBI should be looking at some of these, associated entities and not just sticking to their investigation as it relates to Tom Mnt strictly. Do you have any idea about that at all?
Would that not have been done already, though? Or it
What I'm
would
saying-
be leaked or known that it was done already?
I couldn't find the information on it, and I'm just like wondering, why is it that these, the contents of these phone calls are being included in an affidavit like this, and how they get the ability to to get access to those phone calls if it was strictly related to Todd Mnt. That's kind of what I'm like. What is the FBI really doing here? Is my question.
Well, they might have been investigating her or Disney, and then they found there was nothing, and so that could be an angle too.
Interesting.
That could be, and also you have to understand that Tom Mnt the Chamber of Commerce. So if the FBI is wiretapping this guy, it's not like out of the realm of a possibility that this guy is going to make calls to the spokesperson for the Disneyland Resort, being he's the head of the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I would think that they constantly have communication. So if they're wiretapping him, she will inevitably be part of those wiretaps, because it's normal for her to have a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce.
Normally, I would definitely agree, but apparently these were between a third party. Like there's a couple degrees of separation, which is why I'm like, that's quite interesting. Now, I agree with you, OG. Usually, those intercepted phone calls would be part of an investigation, but it's just there seems to be some degrees of separation between some of these affiliated parties and Todd himself. It's just kind of weird, is all I'm saying. It's I mean, look, if they were looking into corruption in Anaheim in general, I mean, okay, well, then that would include, maybe a bunch of people. But I just kind of find it interesting. OG, we talked about maybe timing, like this is like right before, election season, and all this stuff is kind of coming out. It's just the whole thing just gives me kind of an uneasy feeling looking at it from the long view. Looking at it from the outside, but maybe it's just me.
Wall Street's not worried. Stock's up.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
No, the stock was up actually quite a bit today. But Alia, do you think that there's something to this, and what Ray was kind of touching upon, or do you think that do you think basically, do you feel like Disneyland Resort or this Carrie Nocella executive over at Disneyland, do you think that we would have heard something by now if they were gonna move against her, like try to indict her or something? Like, do you think we would have heard something by now, or do you think it's still too early? Where are you kind of at with that?
I feel that she would be either listed as a person of interest, or I don't know what the official terms are in this business kind of litigation world, but the official wording is that there's no charges against her and no charges against Disney. So I would think that would be included in this investigation if that were to happen. I mean, they might have looked into something and to details to see, but I think it was a situation of that she was that they're on that. I mean, I'm going to admit it, that ethical edge, but it's still legal. So
my concern with it though is that with something this this serious as far as like on a scope, that if it was nothing more to do with Disney, wouldn't have Disney come out and made an official statement or in some way of
well, they did. I mean, not on their Twitter page or website or anything, but they did have an
they
official
actually
statement
said
in
that
response.
they are completely
cooperating. They're cooperating with the authorities.
Right, and
Okay.
I think they said that we have seen the media reports of the
right, they're
complaint. No
cooperating,
authorities
but I
have
mean,
reached
like,
us.
did it actually state that they are in the clear? Or is it that's what I'm saying. So if there is nothing officially mentioned of that, is there still other investigations within the realm of Disney that nothing is completed yet?
To your point, George, the FBI hasn't had a press conference, either implicating Disney or freeing them of any I don't know, illicit activities or whatever. There really hasn't been. It's just kind of ambiguous, and that kind of speaks to my point where it's like if they did file a FISA warrant to get claim this information, I mean that could lead to communications with Disney as
I hope
as far as that's
not the
concerned.
case. I hope that's not the case. I want them to be in the clear. I'm more of a person that I love like when someone just says it direct to me and says, you know what, we're in the clear, we're all good, but unfortunately this isn't the case, and that's what's kind of concerning me.
I get the sense that this is like one of many investigations of the FBI, but it's not like a priority for them. It's not. I don't sense that investigation hunger, big fish sense from the FBI either. So,
Right.
I mean,
well,
I'm just to say my piece on this. I'm just hoping that Disney didn't do anything wrong. I mean, obviously, right? I mean, that would look really, really bad, especially when you have federal investigators looking into it. I don't think they did.
Company will survive. We'll just get rid of crappy people. So it's for the best.
yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And if there are bad apples, like you said, they should be dragged out and
clean the toilet bowl, flush the turds. So
what a picture, George.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And from what I understand, I could be mistaken on this, but I don't think that I think the only outlet that was even mentioning Disneyland in this whole thing was the LA Times. And they were saying their sources say that Company A is Disneyland, but everyone else is kind of running with what the LA Times said and kind of just regurgitating their report. We don't really know.
And like you pointed out, OG, LA Times is, they kind of have a with Disney because of that whole film critic thing.
Yes.
So, this could have been their,
Right.
I mean, look, the affidavit heavily implies it's Disney, and they heavily imply that they have an outsized role in the kind of governmental affairs of Anaheim and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, this can really only be one person. Like, this can only be one entity.
And I do have to say, I am looking forward to the expo this time around, but I'm looking forward to it in a sense of not necessarily saying, oh, I can't wait to see what's new and coming to the parks. I'm more excited on this level because I feel like the expo is going to be that final door that kind of opens to the fact of where is the company leaning towards, and like the official statement of saying, where is Disneyland Forward going to be? If we get absolutely nothing, or they kind of sugarcoat it in the sense of saying, oh, well, this is going to be down the road 10, 15, 20 years, then I think we can kind of come back and look at it and say, you know what, they're in some turmoil right now, but I think for me, the expo is going to shed some light on the subject as to not even just even with Anaheim, but even with Florida as well.
Yeah. I'm
very curious to see what's going to come with the parks as far as Disney's strategy to move forward. Again, no pun intended.
Yeah.
The priorities. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Before we move on to our next topic, any final thoughts on this whole Anaheim corruption probe, or any?
I do have to say, I really do hope Disney is in the clear. I really do. Like, I hope that there's no issues. I want there to be no issues, and maybe right now, maybe no news is good news.
True.
I know I kind of butchered the description on this whole thing because it is kind of a it's a very kind of complex issue. There's a lot of people, being looked at, a lot of persons of interest, right? It's a very complicated web of stuff. I try to give everybody the Cliff Notes version and the most relevant facts as it relates to Disneyland, but I agree with George. I hope Disneyland's not implicated. I hope there's no impropriety between them and the city and so forth. But I mean, hey, we're getting a number of politicians either resigning or city council members affirming their stances and so forth, and we're going to see some overcorrection one way or another, I think, and it might implicate Disneyland.
Hypothetically, though, if just to say Disney or somebody in the company was part of this and they kind of flesh them out, get them out. Yes, it does make Disney look bad, especially with everything that's going on right now. But I do feel like it could also benefit the fact that if somebody is in the company that's doing all this, then it can kind of rebirth the company, so to speak, and kind of get them on a track, so to speak, of, I mean, it's not going to happen right away, mind you, but I mean, like, I do think that it's better to kind of pull the rotten tooth out of the mouth than let it sit there and rot.
Right. And look, here's the thing. Yeah, if someone at Disney broke the law, they should be held accountable. Full stop.
100%.
They should be completely held accountable for that.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no excuse for that. And Disney should be swift in their response if that does come to light. And obviously, firing this person or whatever they have to do, they got to be swift. But
we don't need any more public relations nightmares.
No, definitely not. Christina,
I'm going to leave it right now. No news, good news. I'm staying optimistic.
Same.
Yeah. I think every day that goes by that Disney is not like officially implicated in the situation, I think is good. I think Ollie, I think you mentioned to me via email, if we can get like a month or 2 months from now, and we're kind of where we are now, where Disney's not officially like in the crosshairs, they're not officially like being implicated in this, then they're probably safe. Do you still kind of feel that's the case?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that actually works out because the expo is in September. So by those few months, I definitely think whether it's good news or bad news, that's really when Disney's not going to come out and say, oh, by the way, we had all this legal, crap that we're dealing with right now. But I mean, it'll come out in a way where you can kind of see whether or not something really went down or not based on what is presented to us, I feel, at the expo.
And with how everything is by the law, if they have T's crossed, I's dotted, I think they're going to go forward with Disneyland Forward. And they'll just deal with whatever happens. So there's a lawsuit against them, whatever. They're just going to go forward with it, pun intended.
I very much question the political will of the city council members involved in approving something like Disneyland Forward. Will aspects of it eventually come? I think they will, but I'm unsure about Disneyland Forward at the current moment right here. I think at the minimum it gets delayed. Assuming Alia, you're correct, and they can actually kind of have kind of a campaign on that for Disneyland Forward, like George said, and kind of,
it may not be it may not be at the extreme or the point that they wanted, but there's going to be like a moderate compromise. I do think that's going to work out because I think everybody is going to just remember how it was when it was closed during the pandemic.
And let's remember, folks, what has ever come out of Disney that always stayed to the top that they presented? It always comes out moderate, so that it's Disney's norm.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Moderate.
if you can express that there's no impropriety associated with Disneyland Forward, and that it's actually a benefit to the city and not like a hindrance, like maybe the $320 million land sale was, then I think the public can go, hey, you know what, not bad, let's go forward with that. And I think everybody can get around that. If they can't, well then and
if it's delayed, it may not be completely because it's the will of the council, whatever. Disney might decide PR, etc. It's just best to pull back. Let's just put it on the back burner for now for PR.
And to that point, if Kevin Potrock is excited to, if he's talking about it at the expo, saying, "Hey, we're excited about this thing," and he indicates that it is moving forward, then that also kind of has its own implications as well.
Yeah, and I just have to say too, like to all the people that were protesting all this stuff the other day, and to just the residents of Anaheim who a lot of them who are concerned about, Disney getting their way, right? Like, oh man, we can't have Disney get their way. We can't have Disney get their way. But if you're an Anaheim resident, just have a little bit of an open mind, because just because Disney gets their way doesn't necessarily mean it's bad for you. A lot of those hospitality workers standing on the corner protesting, they directly benefit from Disneyland Resort being there. Protesting or not, they directly benefit from it. And if Disney were to expand their parks, add more hotels, and make it even more of a draw, that's inevitably going to help those hospitality workers. It's going to help the family-owned bakery across the street. It's going to help the mom and pop liquor store. It's going to help
Carl's Jr.
Yay!
I mean, Disney.
Favorite.
I know it's fashionable to be like, well, you know what? Just fuck Disney, man. I don't want them getting their way. But really, you're not just fucking Disney, though. A lot of the businesses in the area benefit from Disney being even more of a draw. So I think that's something to keep in mind. If Disneyland Forward is able to go forward, it helps the businesses in the area too.
It's rezoning. It's not like
of their own land too.
Right,
it's
their
like
own land, and it's not like it's not like hey, we want to kick out the local. I don't know,
the Cocos or whatever.
Yeah, or the hey, there's a home for pets that have been abandoned. Yeah, we want to go ahead and destroy that and take out the baby seals and club them. No, it's not something like that. It's it's horrible.
What a picture!
Yeah, sorry, do apologize, but.
No,
I'm just saying, like, it's zoning. It's their land. They want to do what they want, and I think they should be granted the ability to do what they want. They have it. They own it. They pay taxes on it. I think it's their right to do so.
Twitter messages saying "Save the seals."
Oh no! Now I'm going to be canceled. Damn George. No, he's right though.
And one kind of final thought before we move on. Disney, and look, I know I'm going to sound like a shill, but this is just kind of what I noticed. Disney always seems to be responsible when they do a lot of these big expansions. They always have like kind of this kind of baked into the cake, more parking structures, infrastructure changes to kind of accommodate. It's not like they're just going out there and just throwing the stuff out there. Oh yeah, we're gonna have a third park, and Anaheim, you deal with the congestion. It always seems like the infrastructure, the parking structures, and all that is sort of baked into the equation. We saw that when they built DCA. Yeah, we even saw that recently when they were trying to do the Gateway project and all that stuff. I don't think Disney's going to throw the residents under the bus. I think they're really going to try their best to sort of respect the area.
So to Alia's point, I'm sorry. No, I was
just saying those projects they have to be individually approved as well. So it's not like they could even if they wanted to. But go ahead, George.
Oh no, I was just going to say. So to Alia's point, then maybe really, hopefully, fingers and toes crossed that because it's within their own jurisdiction and maybe it's not going to hinder any businesses or residencies or seals, as long as everything is like within the jurisdiction of Disneyland, maybe they'll kind of skate by as far as as you guys mentioned, not maybe to the highest priority of what it was going to be, but maybe just subpar something just to keep things moving.
Right. 100%.
But I'm sorry, 100%. I know we got to move on. I just have one last question.
Sure,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is Disney eyeing the stadium, the land?
Oh, that's
I don't think they want to touch it now. I don't think they would. Even if they were, they're like, no, we're not touching that right now.
Right now, that would be that's toxic right now. Yeah.
Unless they overpaid for it.
Oh, that's the only way, yes, that they could look angelic, pun intended, with
right. It's like, hey, you know what? You're getting 320 million. How about 750? It's like, oh, okay, cool, all right, let's go. Disneyland Forward, right on. That's the only way, but I don't think they're gonna do that.
Yeah, okay. And plus, I think there's way more likelihood that the Toy Story lot becomes a third park because it's of its proximity, it's closer. But also, from what I understand, the Anaheim Stadium it has a lot of residential areas surrounding that, and I think they might come across quite a few issues trying to build any kind of park there.
Maybe a parking structure.
Well, I was thinking more like, do you think that would be more for like the Gateway, so to speak, to have like more of a parking structure so that can free up more of the land within the resort?
Interesting.
Maybe it's possible. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Now, our next topic is Splash Mountain. What is going on with Splash Mountain? 2 years ago, they announced, Disney, that they were going to retheme Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog. They're going to remove, the current theme, which they feel is problematic. They want to go in a different direction, right? And we haven't seen much movement on that front at all. Now, Dre, from what I understand, you have a clip from the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill and Len. What's his name? Len Testa from Touring Plans. Yep, you got it. So Jim and Len, they're going to talk a little bit about this, and we're going to listen to this. We're going to pause along the way, kind of break it down. It'll be interesting. So, go ahead. You have the floor, Mr. Vashkai.
Yes, sir.
Even stuff that they announced, like the Splash Mountain redo, where's that?
Yeah, I think that's going to happen in Disneyland. I don't doubt it for a second. Mm-hmm. I will be extremely surprised if Splash Mountain in Walt Disney World gets rethemed to Tiana. And my reasoning for that is they announced this thing a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. At this point, we should have very detailed concept art. Mm-hmm. We should have an exceptionally good idea of what each scene in the ride is going to be. And frankly, we should have seen contract announcements from Disney. Things should be going out for requests for proposals, RFPs, to vendors to start manufacturing the different ride elements. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen that. And we're in year 3 of that. So
go ahead.
Okay, so that was Len, right? From what I understand?
Yes.
Okay, he brings up a great point there.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the only thing that I'm kind of questioning about what he's saying. He's saying that he has no doubt that Disneyland will get the Tiana remake, retheme. Florida, though, will not get it. And his kind of reasoning behind that is because there hasn't been any contracting out for this stuff, right? Why would he think that Disneyland's getting it? Because there hasn't been anything, any of that.
If they're going to do one, they would have to do the other because they're going to mirror right back to what the attraction is.
You would think. So here's the interesting thing. From what we have heard is that Splash Mountain at Disneyland and Walt Disney World are being looked at as kind of like two separate projects because those structures are so different, right? And his big thing about, you make a good point there, his big thing about the differences between both of these and why maybe Walt Disney World might not get it and Disneyland might is because of theming. Now, I don't think that's the greatest basis for that, but he does make a good point and good argument.
That was always my argument. Because, I mean, if they really wanted to stick with theming, it doesn't, as much as they would want to change it for whatever purpose, it does not make sense in Florida's because the way Frontierland works, you start coming out of Liberty Square, and then that's where you have the Frontierland theme with the Country Bears, and then it loops around, and then it's going to stop at Splash, and then recontinue where Big Thunder
into the Old
is.
West and Big Thunder. Yeah.
Right.
That's the big issue. And he kind of centers his whole argument around there. But he does make a good point that we haven't really heard from vendors. We haven't even really seen concept art and all these kind of things that implicate both, quite frankly. But we'll let him continue here.
Something's going on in Walt Disney World with that. And we've talked about the issues with that before. I definitely think Tiana deserves a ride in the Magic Kingdom, right? And if Splash Mountain is it, that's fine. The issue that they're running into is the one around theming, right? But there's a whole separate conversation about that, Jim.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I mean, again, that this was initially announced in June of 2020, and if this were actually happening, we would have heard from vendors.
At this point, 3 years into the announcement, right? Because Disney said, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in 2020, when they announced it, they said, we've been thinking about this for a while, which means they didn't come up with it last week. No. So that's why I think we're on year 3 of this. Yeah. And that at year 3, we should have at this point seen more progress. We should have seen a concrete plan for shutting the ride down. Our sources should have told us, like, okay, these things are out for bid. The building of the animatronics, the redoing of the ride vehicles, and so on. Right. Again, I think the issue that they're running into there is the theming of Frontierland. We all know that Frontierland runs up until the year 1895, but we know that Princess and the Frog happens in the 1920s, and that 25-year gap is too much to overcome. Right.
Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, with each passing year, I think there's less and less chance this is going to get done. And I think that's for either coast. And the reason why I say that,
I agree.
Yeah, because I think Chapek, here's the thing, and we kind of saw this with the Florida bill. And he backpedaled, he reversed course with that, but after an enormous amount of pressure, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to this thing, which is also a social political thing, right? There's not a whole lot of like pressure to change it. And I think that really at his core, at Chapek's core, I think he really does want to keep Disney pretty neutral. I think he kind of did go back because of the Florida bill heat he was getting, but he's not getting that with Splash Mountain. And from what I understand, this is a very expensive attraction to retheme, and they're having a lot of issues in terms of just the funding right now with everything going on. You know, they just came out of the pandemic where the parks were closed. Hey, look, I think things are kind of stacked against it. I really do. But hey, I mean, you never know.
I may be in the minority here, but when Disney first made the announcement saying that they were kind of thinking of this overall change for quite some times, I could be wrong. And I really feel like because at the time when this was announced, tensions were so high rise because of the political background and what was all involved in it. I personally don't feel like Disney has been working on this for quite some time, because that even just goes down the argument of saying that if they've been working on this prior to June of 2020, then it would definitely not have taken this long to get absolutely nowhere, to get nothing. Now, if they were to still do it, speaking only more so of Walt Disney World, I still don't think that they will, because I agree with OG. I think the longer the ladder goes, the shorter amount of time that they're going to actually consider doing this. And with Splash Mountain being a beloved attraction, whether you agree with the storyline or not, but just the attraction within itself, it's going to have major downtime, which means a lot of crowd control. And I feel like if they were to do it at Walt Disney World, they would wait for the railroad and Tron to be operational.
They have to. That's no question. But you would think that they would have all their ducks in a row right now at this point to do that.
That is true. Wait. And actually,
by the time those things are open.
Wait, I just dawned on me. Now, would Splash Mountain be done? The railroad would then have to go back down again, wouldn't it?
They could do what they did back when Splash Mountain was being constructed and kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, with it being done, they're going to want that railroad up. So that's even going to be a delay for Splash Mountain, because they're going to want people to have, I mean, the railroad's been done more so than Tron. I mean, even before the shutdown, the railroad has been done. So it's like they're going to want it to run. So to then have to reroute it, Or
they could put it in shutdown mode like they did before back in the 90s, when like I said, when or the late 80s when Walt Disney World was actually building Splash Mountain, right? They could. Are they? As we've seen with Tron.
And then it also goes by, depending on their funding, as OG had mentioned, that if they give a half-assed job with an attraction of this scale, they're never going to hear the end of it.
Well, they won't, because this is seen as a social change. So if you go into this and half-ass it, and it's obvious you half-assed it, it's insulting to a lot of people, and you don't want to do that. This version, this Princess and the Frog version, has to be on par or better than what we currently have. Otherwise, they're going to be in a PR mess, and Chapek can't afford that right now. Alia, what do you think about this? I mean, where do you kind of stand with this whole retheming? Do you think it's going to happen? Are you kind of iffy on it, or where are you at?
Well, part of me is like, maybe we should wait till D23 Expo, because if it's going to happen, that's where they're going to announce something about it.
Again, it all comes back down to the expo. We're going to get all the answers at the expo. It's the Holy Grail.
It's the Oracle.
Exactly, right? It's going to tell us so much about the future. No, I agree with you, Alia. That's what I was going to say, and I'm glad you actually said it, because it's like, if we haven't heard, if we don't hear anything about this at the expo, then we know this is done. There's no way.
Well, and there's just not, and we talked about this on the phone earlier, Dre. Like, there's not a whole lot of, I think not a whole lot of financial incentive to do it, because they're not going to, it's already a very popular attraction.
Correct.
Like you said, maybe they'll sell more Tiana merch, but you could do that with a new Tiana restaurant though, too, which is like going to be a quarter of the price.
Yeah. And kind of what everybody wanted.
Right. Exactly. So there's a lot of variables working against this thing.
It is, because like you said, it's kind of a lateral move. Think about it. When you redo a Maelstrom, right? Sure, you didn't add any capacity, but you added demand, right? Now that attraction's going to get, all kinds of lines because people want to see their Frozen characters. Right. The problem with this is that Splash Mountain's already very popular. It's one of the most popular attractions, at least in the summer, that you can possibly get at. So you're not adding capacity and you're not necessarily creating demand. Maybe you create demand in the form of vacation packages because people want to see this attraction because it has been so talked about initially when it reopens. Sure, that's a possible thing, but you can do that just as easily with all kinds of attractions that really need the kind of the IP or the reimagining treatment. I mean, Walt Disney World is in no short supply of attractions that need to be overhauled and redone. Right? I think we can say that.
And I think if it doesn't happen, they'll kind of put the blame on Tokyo Disney. Because my understanding is Tokyo Disney doesn't want to do this change. And so what they might say is that if they're asked flat out, what about the Tiana, Princess and the Frog reframe for Splash Mountain? They'll probably say because it's not going to be done at Tokyo Disney. It can't be done worldwide. We wanted it unified, and it can't be. That's why we decided not to go forward with it. And we'll probably kind of throw Tokyo Disney under the bus there.
And if they truly had this concept in mind prior to their announcement, I were to think that they would have used the shutdown as sort of like that opportunity. That way it would have been down at least
construction time. Yeah,
right. At least they could have at least started it. It would have still been done by the time the parks would have been reopened, but that would have been the opportunity to do so, not to just say, oh, yeah, well, we've been, thinking about this for quite some time. We're going to announce it now, wait for it to open, and then 2 years later, we'll show you a piece of concept art.
I don't know, with it, I will disagree a little bit on that, simply because, remember, when they announced this in June of 2020, the parks reopened shortly thereafter, at least Walt Disney World. So it's like you don't necessarily want that capacity hit at a time when you need as much capacity as you can possibly get because demand's going to be so high, right? So it kind of makes sense that they might, back end us a little bit, but now we're kind of getting into like Epic Universe is going up quick, right? It's going up fast. Tron is kind of, it's getting pretty close to really opening, honestly. I mean, what I'm hearing is, late 2022 is kind of when they want that kind of thing to open right here. So we're getting to a point now where it's like you can take the capacity hit with Splash Mountain being down. But it's like we haven't seen any momentum towards that arrangement.
That is true, but now with Disneyland have being closed for how long, and everyone was kind of aiming towards this to be more of a Disneyland attraction more than Walt Disney World. Could that have been the same way that they could have at least started with the time frame, or did they really? So they really didn't know exactly if they were really going to do this or not. I feel like, and it's a sticky situation, but I think really at the time Disney was more so beckoned to the call because of the issues that were going on at the time.
The way I've heard it told to me by the sources that we mutually have. The way I was told about it was there was like a 2-person team or a very small team looking into the possibility of overlaying Splash Mountain with, Princess and the Frog. And at a time when, this project was announced, that team hadn't really moved up. From what I understand, they hastily commissioned that art that we saw and then use it all over the press releases and so forth. Didn't provide any more explanation than just the details that were in that announcement and that one piece of concept art. And now they're moving forward. And from what I understand, it was, there's a very procedural thing that they do with the Disney Parks blog. Like you have to get you have to get a range of approvals. You have to get it scheduled in specific ways, and that's like months in advance, and it's all these kind of things because Disney's so anal about public relations and their press and so forth, that they want to be in control of the story. And this thing was just railroaded. I mean, this thing was just like boom, and it took a lot of factions of the company by surprise because just of how expensive this process actually was going to be. And so the fact that we haven't really heard more than that, as this audio goes on to relate, we have a lot of people, responding to things, but not really a plan. And I think this was, like George's point was, it was a response to some of the social political environment at the time. Right. But now we're seeing maybe the consequences of doing something like that, because now you have people who look at Splash Mountain in a very different way than they did before. Right. You have people really wanting this attraction, and like OG said, the financial incentive to do that, it might just not be there. This is a minimum $100 million per attraction, at minimum. Good. And then what happens from there? Yeah.
Now, do we have more audio from Jim Hill?
Oh, we got a little bit. We can play that.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and continue with interesting conversation.
Sure.
The Frontierland includes cars and dates up to 1920, but it doesn't really, right? The closing of the American West, we date to around 1895.
Just this week, we got the announcement of the first haunted house for this year's Universal Halloween Horror Nights, which was the classic Universal Monsters. And Epic Universe opens in 2025. They've got a whole land set aside to celebrate the Universal Monsters. So, I mean, you could literally see Universal has a plan. We're going to reintroduce these characters. And they did a house last year for Bride of Frankenstein. There's literally rocks in the river they're going to hit on their way to reintroducing these characters in the theme park. And Disney, 3 years after they announced, we're putting Tiana in Splash Mountain. How? Did you see the one piece of concept art? Look at that.
I think you and I have both heard the same rumor that one possible way for Disney to get around this is to focus Splash Mountain on the time before Tiana was princess. So like in the years before Tiana was born, and just use the other Princess and the Frog characters. Like, this is what they were like before they met Tiana, right? Which gets around the issue of the 1895 date, but does not fulfill the promise of putting Tiana in the ride. Yeah. So there's all sorts of like, how do you make good on that? And I think you and I have both heard the rumor that you could turn Pecos Bill's into Tiana's restaurant.
You could.
You could, which is, again, that's not the same thing as a ride, right? There would be legitimate concerns about representation and equity there, which I think are something that would need to be addressed. And I don't know how Disney gets around that.
No. There just doesn't seem to be a plan. There seems to be a lot of people reacting to things. It's like, okay, we have a plan. We have a path. It's like, oh my God, this just happened. It's like.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it.
Based on where Pecos Bill is located, in my personal opinion at Walt Disney World, I don't really see Tiana's place there, to be honest with you. It just, I would actually see more of Hungry Bear becoming Tiana's place.
Hungry Bear makes total sense.
Total. Yeah. But here's the thing. I think it was a little unfair for them to kind of talk about the no plan thing, because they're kind of comparing apples and oranges. They kind of use Epic Universe. Well, see, Epic Universe is planning ahead. They're building this monster thing.
Sure.
But that's a whole new theme park. You have to plan ahead for that. I mean, this is a re-theming, and it's not the same. It's an apples and oranges situation. I mean, it's you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
it's different. It is different.
I think it is absolutely different. It is absolutely different when it comes to that. And if they were to say, well, we have a plan maybe for the replacement of I think Shrek 4D out there in Universal Studios Florida, maybe that might be a more apt comparison. But to their point, it's Now, Lentesta makes a big point about like theming when it comes to like Frontierland, and that is definitely a big concern. I don't think those things are insurmountable, but how much money do you necessarily want to apply to make that happen? Right. And so it's all those kind of logistical issues. Apparently, they've gone through the Splash Mnt. at Disneyland, Splash Mnt. at Walt Disney World, and Splash Mnt. at Disneyland. Like, yes, that fits more in line with New Orleans Square, right? And I do agree with you, George. A Hungry Bear redo to make it into like Tiana's Place, and you could even have like the multiple tiers represent like a steamboat and stuff like that. You could do some really outrageous stuff there, really, if you wanted to. But it's like the amount of expense that you would need to do that ride in comparison to Splash Mountain is immense. And then, Splash Mountain and Walt Disney World is immense. And then when you look at Splash Mountain and Walt Disney World, I mean, it's just like, how do you overcome those issues as it relates to the time period? I just don't know how you do this.
It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And look, I mean, this is something that Disney was definitely, it was a response to the summer of 2020. So I think that there was, like, to their point, I mean, there was a bit of a rush job on this because I feel like it was a total it was reactionary. It was, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see. I think that with each year that goes by, I think that there's less and less political and financial will to do this. And I just think that there's a huge price tag, and the parks are just now recovering from after the pandy. And I don't know. There's a lot going against it.
I think that if Disneyland Forward does move forward, especially after all this mess that we were talking about in the previous conversation, I truly feel like Disney is going to have more that they want to accomplish before doing a retheme of Splash Mountain. I think that's literally on the bottom of their to-do list.
Yeah, I mean, my whole contention with you, George, is there's so many other things that need money right now. And remember, Disney's in a very financial precarious situation. I mean, yes, the stock, you know, maybe had gone up. That hasn't been the trend for the last 52 weeks or whatever, right? The CapEx, problem, capital expenditure problem, where it's like, how much you finance certain projects or even certain divisions and stuff like that. I mean, that's all got to get weighed. And so, the Parks and Resorts division is only going to get so much, right, in comparison to previous years. And it's like, what are you going to do with those funds? Where do you want to apply those funds? And it's like, I don't think at this point Splash Mountain is necessarily the direction to go into right now. And far more other places to put that money.
And it's just like the conversation that we were having the other night about Walt Disney World with the lack of attractions in the parks. Mm-hmm. They're just now going to open up an e-ticket attraction, Tron, in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So the next point of sale, so to speak, is to do another attraction in Magic Kingdom.
To have a capacity hit? I don't think so. It's just not palatable at all.
Right. No, exactly. There's too much going against this thing. There's too much, and they're never going to officially cancel it. I'm telling you right now, you guys, because it is so tied to these social issues, they're never going to come out and say, hey, it's officially canceled. What they'll do is they'll just kind of kick the can down the road and just kind of never make any progress with it. And eventually it'll kind of fall out of the public consciousness and people won't even, it's basically like the Rocket Rod's reopening spring of 2001, right? That sign was up there forever. It was kind of like an indefinite kind of thing, and it never came back. And there's no official end date. Like, there was no official statement by Disney saying Rocket Rides are not coming back. They just never came back, And I think that's kind of what's going to happen here. Most likely is that they just they'll never build it. It'll just kind of be.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if they don't mention anything at D23 Expo, how many people are really going to hold their feet in the fire on this? To be honest, I mean, I think they can get away without doing something. And there'll be some people maybe saying one thing or another, but the news about everything else that's coming will have dominated the news cycle, and that's that. There may be, when they put these things down for refurbishment or whatever, there may be talks about hey, is this refurbishment? Is this going to be the one, kind of thing? But that's really going to be it. Tuoji's statement there. I just don't. I mean, I think you can get away with backtracking on this, at least quietly, and maybe setting this aside for years down the line to where these capital expenditure issues might be resolved. Maybe they can do it properly, that kind of thing. But
Right.
Alia, what do you have to say on this? Do you think it's likely that they go forward with this? Do you think it's maybe the capital expenditure issues that they have right now, maybe their debt issues may prevent this project from going forward at the time that maybe people want it to be? What's your kind of thought on all this?
Oh, I feel so wishy-washy as feeling neutral until news from D23 Expo. But okay, I'll try to properly guess. I think it's on pause. I don't think it's been canceled, but I think it's on pause because of the financial issue. I mean, they could stretch it out, but then, as explained, that would affect Splash Mountain, would probably affect the railroad, and everybody loves the railroad, and that's already been affected by Tron and Walt Disney World. I mean, they might, what they could do is kind of a compromise olive branch, you could say, is show goodwill, is that they could start the process at Disneyland, start it with Disneyland, stretch out that, and then once that's done, then years down the line go to Walt Disney World. That they might do that.
Yeah, possible. They're in a tough spot. They're in a tough spot because there's just so many. Like, the theme thing is a huge issue, not for Disneyland. I mean, honestly, Princess and the Frog for Splash Mountain at Disneyland theme wise is like kind of like a chef's kiss, like perfection, because it straddles Critter Country and New Orleans Square, and Princess and the Frog IP plays to both of those. Yeah. It's really flawless. Florida, as mentioned many times on the show, has theming issues. When you change that attraction to Princess and the Frog, there's major theming issues. So people say, well, why don't you make Splash Mountain in Walt Disney World another inclusive property that isn't Princess and the Frog but fits that Frontierland theme? That's an option, but that's even more money they got to shell out, because now you're creating an entirely new overlay or retheme to the thing. It's even gonna be more expensive, and it just it's a rock and a hard place. And I think you're right, Alia. I think it's definitely on hold right now. I don't think it's moving forward. I think it's kind of in, like they say in the film industry, developmental hell, basically. That purgatory, that's where it's at.
Pretty much.
We may all be surprised and shocked at D23, but
and hey, I'm glad to be wrong on this. I'm if they announce something at D23 Expo, hey, more power to them. We haven't really seen any rumblings of that going into there. But I mean, if they do, and like you said, Alia, it might be something to where they do Disneyland's first, get that whole thing squared away and arranged, and then do Walt Disney World later. That way, you still have momentum driving towards that end, but you're just stretching it out a little bit longer than maybe you necessarily would under different economic conditions and so forth.
Now, Dre, I have a question for you. Actually, the whole panel, but I'll start with you, Dre. My question to you, and it just kind of dawned on me, and I'm just kind of throwing it out there, see what you guys think. There's been talk, and surprising talk, from like Mice Chat, Dusty Sage, and I think even WDWNT also mentioned it, that they might announce a renovated Tomorrowland at Disneyland. And there's been a lot of murmur and chatter over this. And the reason why I'm bringing that up with this conversation is, do you think it's possible Disney looked at the financials and said, okay, we can spend X amount of money retheming an attraction that's already popular, or we can take that money that we would have thrown into Splash Mountain and redirect it into a new Tomorrowland where we might see more benefit, financial, attendance, and all that stuff? Is that possible that Tomorrowland is now in the conversation because it's redirected funds?
to do a whole land for the price of a redone attraction, that would be a stretch, but maybe, I mean,
but
maybe
it's like,
though.
Splash Mountain's $100 million to redo it.
You're
minimum.
Probably gonna need like $300 million to do Tomorrowland,
right? And
to be honest.
For Tomorrowland,
unless they want to break it up in phases and they want to take the initial capital that would have been directed towards Splash Mountain.
$300 million and a bottle of Valium.
It's possible. Look,
George.
I'm just saying it is possible, and that would be. I mean, there's a lot of baggage attached to redoing Splash Mountain, but I mean, a Tomorrowland redo would be far better received unanimously across the board. In comparison to that. So maybe that was the thinking there. I mean, OG, you might be onto something here. You really might be.
I'm gonna be a Paul Parrot. I'm gonna repeat myself that at the expo again.
That's what I'm all gonna say.
That I feel like, yeah, if we get an announcement of anything of Tomorrowland and absolutely nothing of the retheme of Splash Mountain, to me, I'm just gonna say that's where all the funds went to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think before I move on to our next topic, I think we're all kind of in agreement that if they don't give us any news on this Splash Mountain Tiana retheme, project is officially dead. Whether they say that officially or not, that's the case, because we should definitely get something at the expo regarding this after what, 2 years now, or 2 or 3 years that they've been planning this thing. I mean.
Yeah, 2 years. 2 years from announcement, maybe 3 years in planning.
They would have even announced anything at the Destination D, and they didn't. There was nothing mentioned.
You would think, but now as a little bit more CapEx is rolling out to the Parks Division, this would be the time that you would maybe hear something about it.
I'll even take it one step further. Even if we don't get nothing announced for Tomorrowland, I think if we get any announcement for anything, and nothing of mention of Splash Mountain, then those funds went into whatever project that they announced at the expo. I'm kind of hoping for something more of an expansion of DCA, just saying.
Interesting. All right. Well, we got some breaking news actually just a couple of hours ago from Star Wars Celebration. Mm-hmm. That is fantastic news. Now, I want to say one thing before we get started on this topic. The park stuff, in my opinion, lately has been such a downer. It really has. Between the Reedy Creek and the Anaheim FBI probe and all this stuff, I'm like, man, this is such a downer. The park stuff, they can't catch a break. But after yesterday, I was watching Star Wars Celebration. I watched Kenobi, which was like freaking bonkers, insane good. I loved it. It was so refreshing just to have like fun, exciting stuff happening in that Disney world, so to speak. In that Disney realm.
The Disney Wish doing the shape of Mickey in the Caribbean was pretty cool.
That was very cool too. That was very cool. But it was just refreshing. It really was to see some positive news out there. And it was really nice to see that. And, to kind of piggyback, today at Celebration, they announced that Mando and Grogu will be making appearances at Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. And Boba Fett and Fennec will also be in the land. So it appears that Disney has been listening to fans, and maybe they watch our show. I don't know. But we've talked about this many times. Get rid of the stupid timeline and start putting more Star Wars in the Star Wars land. And that looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. Dre?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to just say, and Boba Fett and Fennec are in Galaxy's Edge starting tomorrow at the time of this recording, May 28th.
Hey.
Wow.
That's
and
fast.
Also, too, we're getting not only that, but new Star Tours destinations as well to incorporate even more of the good stuff that has been coming out of Disney+. Listen, I can't tell you how over the moon I am about this. We have been talking about the show for years. Look, and this goes beyond, even when Chapek, took the role and attached D'Amaro to the head of Parks and Resorts, we had heard conversations about, can we get the Mando characters into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge? And apparently there was a whole movement in order to make that happen. And from what I understand, around the time that season 2 of The Mandalorian ended, those talks, those plans ended, which was just kind of like weird. Like, why would this happen? Maybe it was to coincide with the fact that Star Wars, Galactic Star Cruiser was coming out, and maybe that had something to do with it. But it was just kind of weird how it just all this momentum that was driving towards this had ended, and there were ambitious plans. Like Gina Carano's character, for example, was going to be the mayor of the town of Black Spire and so forth. It was going to be kind of cool, but to see that those weren't just hot air, that was what they wanted to do, and that's where they're going with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I cannot tell you how exciting it is. I mean, these characters are super hot right now. Apparently, the display that they have at Star Wars Celebration, have we seen this, with featuring Mando and some of the characters from Mandalorian, like a big old banthas there, and you have Mando in the ships, in the various ships there. It's this whole big display. I mean, everybody went bonkers over it because it's like, we haven't seen that in anywhere. Right. And the parks should be the place where we see that. Well, now they will be.
And that's where I have high hopes, because with Star Wars Celebration, in my mind, I really wasn't anticipating on hearing anything that was going to be incorporated in the parks other than, like, as far as with Disney, like with Disney Plus and the streaming and possibly theatrical releases. But as far as the parks goes, I really had no expectations whatsoever. And they just kind of went out. And again, I'm going to say it again, back to the expo, it gives me high hopes as what's going to be announced for the expo, because it's showcasing everything of Disney. So if they're going to announce something like this at Star Wars Celebration, what is that going to hold for the expo? And for everyone listening, I went down in the comments below of how many times that Alia and I have used the word expo. I want you guys to
It's our go-to. Expo.
Definitely give us the final count on that one.
Yeah. And here's the thing too. One of the big things that Chapek got a lot of shit for was cutting a lot of the characters and the entertainment when Galaxy's Edge opened. Let's see if fans come around and give the man some credit now that we're getting some of that inserted into the land. Because I've heard the buck stops here with Chapek, so we'll see.
I have heard the buck stops here, and look, I mean, even going back to as far as when Chapek was actually announced as CEO, they were having conversations about, can we fulfill some of the promises that we had stated with what was going to come with Galaxy's Edge in the form of these new characters and so forth. I mean, and who knows whether that was Josh D'Amaro as part of that. I think it was more Chapek part of that. Like, hey, look, we want more synergy. We want more of a direct connection between our Disney Plus products and the parks.
Right.
You got to give Chapek credit. This is happening under his watch, and this is something that the fans, everybody, not just Star Wars fans, by the way, but theme park fans, have been wanting for a long, long time.
And you would think after season 1 of The Mandalorian, of how it blew up, and especially with Grogu merch of everything, he's on T-shirts, hats, dolls, action figures. It's like, why would you not capitalize on that character? Just him alone in the parks is a moneymaker.
Well, and I gotta say, the first 2 episodes of Kenobi, no spoilers or anything, but there's a lot of cool things in that show so far that they should incorporate it into Galaxy's Edge as well. And that's the beauty of this move with Mando and Grogu and Boba Fett, is that it opens the door now going forward. Once they finish Kenobi, maybe they can start throwing in some of the new droids or creatures or whatever from this show in the land. Now you can start to do the synergy machine that has been so successful for Avengers Camp. Brilliant move. Should have been done a long time ago.
#Expo.
Is there a chance?
Will have answers.
Do you think, guys, there's a chance to have, I don't know, maybe Ahsoka or Luke Skywalker make it into the land, because this is kind of part of the Mandoverse now? Is it possible?
Definitely. I think anything's on the table at this point. I think they're gonna go. They're going to probably go like the same route that Avengers Campus is going. Look, they already have the announcement today was for Boba Fett and Fennec and Mando and Grogu. These are both very successful Disney Plus shows. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kenobi characters in the land in the next few weeks, maybe in a month, whenever. I wouldn't be surprised. We have an Ahsoka show coming out in 2023. That's definitely on the table. They're going to want to promote that. Absolutely.
And even if we don't get it right away, this is actually a good starting point, that they're actually doing something with Galaxy's Edge, and it's like
Right.
they're finally, taking those vessels and they're pumping that heart into that land.
Apparently,
Right.
they're Skeleton Crew, right? The new show that was announced at Star Wars Celebration is going to be taking place during the Mandoverse. So it's like, can we get some of that integration in there on to George's and OG's point right here, not so dissimilarly to how they integrate characters from Marvel. When those shows make their debut, we see characters. Can this allow for something like that? I think this is a big, big win here, because we've all kind of understood for a long, long time that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is a good base, right? It's a great land, it just from an aesthetic and design standpoint. But it just, like George has said so many times on the show, it's just missed that heartbeat, right? And I didn't need that much to make it work. I think this is a big, big step in making it work finally.
And if they want to make an even bigger step, give me the banthas. I want the banthas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get the banthas in there. That'd be cool.
Let's get the banthas. Alia, what do you think about this move?
It's exciting, a very good move, and I do wonder if it being announced at Star Wars Celebration, because I do think initially it was Lucasfilm that was the barrier to do this, because I don't think Imagineers really care, but the fact that it was announced at Star Wars Celebration, I think it shows that perhaps the Imagineers, Damaro, Chapek, convinced Lucasfilm this is the way you need to go. You need to go in this direction.
That's a good point, Alia, that you make, that maybe it was a directive from above. Yeah, hey, look, Lucasfilm, we know you kind of want to stick to the continuity, the timeline, but this is the direction we're going to go, basically. I mean, if Damaro and Chapes wants to do it, and it's going to happen, and maybe it was that directive from above, and they just kind of overrode what the studio wanted, or maybe it was a mutual thing. Maybe right. Lucasfilm feels like this is the right direction. Who knows? But it's interesting.
Maybe they saw volunteer feedback from people. Just where's Grogu? Where's Din? And then maybe survey feedback. So things like that too.
That survey feedback had to be loud, because
where's Mando?
And I heard it in my circles, like where's all these characters that I see constantly? Like I go over to Avengers Campus right across the way, by the way, as it exists in Disneyland, right? Avengers Campus is right across, and it's like I see all these characters that I recognize, and I go to Galaxy's Edge, and
there's
Finn and Rey, yay! But where's I'm sorry, Rey and Kylo, I should say, not even Finn.
Ben.
There's Kylo and Rey again, but where's everybody else? I think this is good. Go ahead, George. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and then also on the backbone of the announcement for the Mandalorian season 3, right. So I mean that's a perfect harmonious blend of announcing season 3 for the Mandalorian. So they even confirmed Grogu's going to be in that as well. So then moving forward to say, okay, so we're going to continue that within Galaxy's Edge. I think that's kind of interesting, to the fact of I'm now wondering if now could they possibly incorporate Batuu in actually the show itself.
Maybe that was the point. Maybe there was a directive there in order to do that, in order to make this.
Maybe it does make an appearance in season 3.
Maybe it does make an appearance in season 3 for sure, because it would make a lot of sense here.
Yeah, #Expo.
Expo. Oh, jeez.
We might give a little Easter egg, pay attention to next season of Mandalorian. You might see Batuu. They might say something like that. True.
Yeah. Does this mean new missions for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run?
Yes.
Yeah. It could be attractions. Could be.
And this is really good news. This is what I love to see, because this is something that, it shows that Disney, while they don't always listen to the fans, we're not going to get everything we want. This is one of those victories for fans. This is something that the fans have been craving since the land opened 3 years ago. And they heard the fans, and they adapted, and that's fantastic. I was just gonna say, I think they wanted to be sure it was beyond just Twitter and Star Wars fans. I think they wanted to be sure the general audience or the general tourist wanted it, and then I think that became loud and clear. They wanted that too. So right,
yeah,
and it gives hope to all the people out there that are upset over Genie Plus or reservation system. Hey, you never know. You never know that maybe, like just like this happened with the characters, you never know. Maybe there's enough guest feedback where they'll change course on this other stuff too. I mean, it's all part of that. It's all part of kind of listening to what fans want and adapting, So.
And competition pressure.
You scream loud enough, you get what you want. Sorry, George, go ahead.
No, you're good. But I echo what Dre said. I think like this could also be on a good turning point as far as new attractions, expansion of the land itself. Because again, with Epic Universe opening up, with Super Nintendo World coming to Universal Hollywood, Disney is going to have to kind of beckon the call to do something. And Star Wars is a heavy hitter, and it's just a fact that it kind of faltered during the opening because they couldn't do exactly what they wanted. But, who's to say if really just having the characters in there alone is a good starting point for future expansion and attractions.
There is an expansion pad set aside as, actually, for Disneyland, it's between Galaxy's Edge and Toontown. There's an expansion pad right there for a third attraction. So, if this is successful, which I think it is, right? Do you instead go, well, maybe we don't theme it to necessarily the sequel trilogy. Maybe we theme it to a point where you can incorporate characters from kind of, both sides of the universe, so to speak, OG, maybe even prequel, and sequel, but this kind of Mandoverse that's constructed right here. Maybe we set it there and we have something that everybody's really kind of craving right now. I mean, people do want Mandalorian. And they do want Grogu.
And down the road, if they were to do that third attraction, if they wanted to incorporate that kind of robotic arm or the type of technology that they were going to use for the Avengers e-ticket, that would be one kick-ass attraction to kind of separate yourself. If you're wearing a bounty hunter pack and it's like you kind of just like shoot off like on your own, if they were to change the Avengers e-ticket, but to something more low grade than what it was supposed to, they could always use that in the future for Galaxy's Edge.
And this changes the game for the Star Cruiser. Now that they've opened up this Pandora's box, now you can do what we talked about on this show for a long time, is have different era itineraries. So you can have a cruise based all around the prequels. You can have a cruise based all around the original trilogy or all around the Mandoverse or whatever. This opens that door now for that. I mean, this is a game changer beyond belief.
I would love to see Grogu in the floating Macy's. I'd be all for it.
What it'll be interesting to see is if this is going to be like we're shifting the timeline, or are we just destroying the timeline altogether?
I kind of hope they destroy it because it's crippling for the Star Wars.
There are far more possibilities if they destroy it altogether than if they just shift it. But we might see some interesting developments here.
I think they're destroying the timeline because I think that while these shows sort of deal with the era, like Mando and Kenobi both kind of deal in that era between the prequels and the original trilogy. But eventually we're going to get a show or a movie that's not going to fit in there. So, and they're going to want to promote those as well. Right. So I think
the Acolyte during the ending years of the High Republic, that's coming up, and rumors are who knows when Taika's movie is set. So
right. And from what I understand, Kathleen Kennedy said at Celebration that a lot of the movies will take place after the sequel trilogy. But a lot of the shows are like in this like little spot right between the prequels and the OT. So there are a lot of different eras going on. And I think Disney's going to want to capitalize on all that stuff. And it's an absolute brilliant move. This is a game changer for the land. It's a game changer for the Star Cruiser. I don't think anyone will be upset about this. This is fantastic.
No. You've got some people now that are like, oh, is the timeline done away with? And it's like, what does that mean? Kind of implying that's a negative thing. And I'm like, guys...
Avengers is a hodgepodge,
Exactly. So why can't Star Wars
mean anything,
Yeah, let's have some fun with Star Wars again. Come on, I mean, it's like we're kneecapping ourselves when we don't need to. Star Wars owns the property; they can do whatever Disney owns the Star Wars property; they can do whatever they want with it, right? and let's kind of leverage that. Let's take advantage of that. People want to see the characters that they know and love, at least from the series they're watching right now. Can we do that? And I think we are, and I think it's a good thing.
Right. And the timeline thing was always weird to me because, like, you go to a land like Fantasyland, and no one's going to be like, "Oh, well, Dumbo that story was from 1894, and then Peter Pan is from 1902." That doesn't make any sense. So there's no continuity here. It's like, who cares? It's all fantasy. Put it in the land. It works.
Although you heard them be really serious about timeline or time frame with
Frontierland.
Tiana for Frontierland, so it's like maybe relax with that. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe. I think if it all comes down to execution. If you can execute it well, people are more forgiving of those aspects, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and Galaxy's Edge was already executed very well as a land and as a concept and as an idea, right? It's got good bones, as we've said on the show before, right? It just needs a little bit of character, and I think you can integrate those properly in a way that is consistent with the story you're trying to tell, right? But kind of gives fans and guests what they want and what they crave.
Yeah, no, 100%. Fantastic news.
I hope the droids make an appearance too. They made a lot of droids or a handful of droids for Galaxy's Edge. Hopefully those start to.
Yes.
You saw them in Imagineering behind the scenes, and they had test runs. So hopefully.
Well, and they ended up bringing R2D2 out for the Moonlight Magic event at Hollywood Studios. So
and R2 fits in this world very nicely. We saw like a big bantha, almost audio animatronic or puppet. I don't know how they're achieving that effect in a Star Wars Celebration, but it's like, hey, like, to George's point, let's get a bantha in there. Let's kind of get this stuff in there.
Yeah, no, 100%.
At least sit on it for pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. I even saw at Celebration. I don't know if they were like official droids from Disney or if they were like fan made, because some of the fan made stuff is just as good.
Ridiculous.
But there was like a DJ Rex roaming the convention floor, and he was talking to people. I think he even had interactions with Hayden Christensen. This thing was dope. Star Wars, the official Star Wars account actually tweeted it out. With the interaction between the droid and Hayden, the little Rex roaming around, and that little droid. I would love to see a Rex as a roaming character in Batuu. That would be dope.
Yeah,
come on, do
and
it.
You could do it too because Rex is supposed to be part of Galaxy's Edge or Black Spire Outpost anyway, right? He's already in Oga's Cantina. Between sets, he's mingling with the crowd. Come on, if you want to see my show, go to Oga's. I mean, it's like, dude, it makes too much sense. It makes too much sense.
Too much sense. But I want to thank you all so much for coming on today. This was a fantastic conversation. Boy, did we dive into some stuff today. We were talking Anaheim corruption probe, Splash Mountain. We're talking Star Wars and all kinds of stuff. It was really, really fascinating conversation. It was really great stuff. I'm going to go through the panel. We're going to kind of close this out. Mr. Freshly Squeezed, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Well, you can find me, the best place to find me actually is going to be on Twitter, @VashSky, right down there. Best place to interact with me for all the, as Christine Wasteland McCarthy would say, all the robust conversation, right? And if you want to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And in response to this whole news, I got to play this one little audio clip. Hopefully we don't get demonetized. Hopefully this doesn't get copyright written, but I don't think it will. Okay, just a little intro, right?
Oh, geez, like what?
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. Right, just that little clip right there. I know. Pause it. But everybody knows what's coming, and I think it's sweet. And I think it's awesome. It's going to be really, really good.
It's going to be fantastic. Alia, thank you for coming back on. It's always a pleasure having you on. If you can let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
On Twitter, and my handle is Alia Aloha. I don't know what I'm saying there.
There she is.
Punch drunk. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And right down here, we have Mr. Family Man. We have George. George, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And as always, you can find me right here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with some juicy but yet sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today. It was a really stacked show. Had a really good time. Expo.
You're supposed to join me in with that, George.
It's all about the expo. It kind of is, though. It kind of is. You know?
Oh,
We
yeah.
will get answers at the D23 Expo, definitely. And
a lot of stuff.
something's not announced is also an answer in many ways. So,
Right.
It is.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But thank you all for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.